We'll make
Hello
it
and welcome
work.
to the Social Recruiting Show. I'm Katrina Collier. I'm a little stressed. We've never had problems going live before, but we're here. Um, holy crap. Oh, that's right. I'm not going to swear. This goes out on LinkedIn, but whatever. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and I am, of course, author of The Robot Proof Recruiter. I'm joined by my gorgeous, talented talent acquisitional professional, the one, the only, the amazing Glenn Martin.
Hola.
And the reason I'm so stressed is because today's guest is so important to me, and this is such an important topic, and I felt like my throat was being held back, which was ironic. Kimberly Jones, Kim Jones, I didn't even get to ask you in the green room which you prefer.
It's okay. Either one is fine.
Kim the J,
Kim the
welcome to the
J.
Social Recruiting Show to talk tough
Thank
topic
Welcome.
this week.
you. Thank
Welcome,
you.
Welcome,
welcome.
Kim.
Happy to be
Welcome.
here.
Oh, I need a Valium. Sorry, I don't.
Oh, man.
We have never had a problem going live. It's like
Wow.
StreamYard, smooth tech.
Wow.
So
It was there to test us,
Yes,
it
it
Katrina,
was.
was.
and we
It was.
came through
Mm.
perfectly
Like a
fine.
champ. Like a
But
champ.
it felt ironic because I think it's so important we talk about this topic. And I felt
Mm.
like we were being shushed.
Yes.
You know
And
what
we
I
won't
mean?
be
It was like,
shushed. We
I
will
will
not be
not be
shushed.
shushed.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Glenn, your
And
question for
relax.
Kim.
Yeah. I was going to say, you take a second, Katrina, and let's let Kim warm everybody up by telling us. So, Kim, look, as Katrina said,
Yeah.
super excited to have you on the show.
Thank
I
you.
think what we're going to be touching on today is such an important subject. Before we really move into that, it would be really lovely to kind of get a bit of context from you in terms of your career today. How did you kind of get into
Sure.
HR? Just kind of give us a bit of a summary as to Kim and your job to date.
Sure,
How's that
sure.
sound?
Yeah. So I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I live in LA. I'm kind of in between LA and Ohio now. I'm the youngest of 11. I have 9 sisters and one brother. And so, how I found my way into HR, my father worked for a construction company. And
Good.
so, in the summer, I had an opportunity to go with him every once in a while to different construction sites. And I was always just fascinated by buildings, just the how do you draw up designs and dig out a hole and make a building and know how many people to put in it. So I wanted to be an architect until about 10th grade. And what I learned was I loved math, but I wasn't good enough at it to pursue a math based career. And so I'm like, crap, what do I do? Well, because I was so fascinated with these pretty buildings, I'm like, well, let me just go work in a pretty building. And HR was typically the front office in a pretty building. And so I was like,
I love that.
what do these
Yeah.
HR people do to sit in the pretty office? And when, I learned like, oh, HR is the department that has to know everything that the company does. They are consultants. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
what I want to do. I want to understand what the whole company does. And so I settled into a career, started originally at Nationwide Insurance Company and was there for 13 years and then just decided I needed to see more of the world. And so I've been really fortunate and have worked for a lot of, globally recognized companies. And after doing that for, almost 20 years, just decided I wanted to do that for myself and help more companies. And so I started my company, Kelton Legend, February of 2017 and have not looked back since. And then added an additional endeavor, which I never saw myself doing. I am also an instructor at the University of California, Irvine. And I teach a course called Technology Applications and Talent Management, specifically in the Office of Continuing Education. And this program is geared towards international students. So every class, I have students from all over the world. And so, in
That's so
addition to
cool.
me teaching, I am also learning. And I
That's
am forever grateful to the universe for all of the things that my life and my career has become.
that's
And you
awesome.
also you get to travel a lot as well, don't you? Because I have
I
seen
do.
lots of photos of you in Egypt, which seems to draw you as well.
I felt at home in Egypt. It is
Ah, interesting.
I went for my birthday in 2018. I did Zimbabwe and Egypt kind of as the
Oh,
main
that's right. We
places.
missed each other, didn't we? For
We
like
did.
2 days.
Yes, yeah. So I
Because I was
spent
the Zambia side and you were the Zimbabwe
yes,
side. That's
that was
right. I
on this
remember that now.
yes. Yeah, and so I've told people when I got there, I just felt a great deal of peace when I was there.
Mm.
People were very welcoming, and so I've been back 4 times since my original journey. So yes, my passport. I still have one continent to go. I need to go to South America, but Antarctica. Interesting enough, most people don't get to go there. That was my first continent, was
Oh,
Antarctica.
wow.
Yeah, so when I worked for Raytheon, I managed the Polar Services program. So I was able to
Wicked.
go to the continent for 6 weeks, mostly at
Does
McMurdo,
that
but I
mean you
did
did the 2 days of the sea crossing,
no.
which
So
is
in the program, we go from Denver, so Denver to LA, LA to Sydney, and then Sydney to Christchurch. And so
right?
you assemble there, get your gear issued, and then from
Uh,
Christchurch over to the main station, which is McMurdo. And so
well,
it's
on a
a
plane.
on a plane. It's
Oh,
the Air National Guard. Yeah. So if you're on the research vessels, you go from Punta Arenas, South
yeah, I
America,
can't do that.
over to Palmer Station, or like the cruises, will
But
deploy
this is
to
why I'll
you.
never get the seventh continent. I am not doing that sea crossing, and very few people get to fly.
That Drake
So,
Passage is not a
yeah,
friendly place
no,
on Earth.
no,
So
no. I'd have to knock myself out for 2 days. No. So I'll stick with 6.
okay.
I'm on a different 6 to yours.
Okay.
So,
That's cool.
okay, are we ready for this discussion? Um,
Yes.
Mm.
obviously, I almost actually find it a little ironic because I met you in Minneapolis.
You
This is where
did.
this is all kicked off, right?
Yes, yes.
So
Mm.
we met at the ERE conference, and then we had a ball going to Prince's home. That was
Yes.
actually a huge amount of
It
fun with
was.
actually Tangi Pettis that was on a
Yes.
couple of weeks ago
Yes. Shout out to
Yeah.
as
Angie.
well. Yeah, Tangi and
Yes.
I forever remember her as getting banned from a nail salon.
Yeah.
Um, but I couldn't think of anybody else when I wanted to talk about this topic
Thank you.
because I know
Thank
I
you.
struggle with it. I don't know what to say, how to act. And I
Mm.
know you want to really talk about the truth of diversity,
Oh,
and like
absolutely.
Mm.
I want you to be as blunt as you're happy to be and
Okay.
just tell us what we need to do, what you need from us.
Mm.
Sure. Sure.
Anything. Just and talk about your nephew's post, which was
Yes.
heart-wrenching.
I'm glad, and
Mm.
I didn't think, I'm sorry, I didn't share it with Glenn, but like I said, as
That's
I was,
okay.
prepping for, our conversation today and many conversations that I hope to have, beyond
Mm.
today. Like I said, it's one of the things that has helped center me. So I'm going to talk about my family a lot, and
Yep.
Wilkerson with ERE. I hope she's part of our audience
I
this
haven't
morning,
seen her
because
yet.
she's heard a portion of this story. So, I mentioned I'm from a very large family. The majority of my sisters were born in my parents' kind of first house. I was born on Kelton Avenue, which is why I named my company Kelton Legend. And
Ah.
so my father, in the construction industry, the neighborhood that we moved into, my father was friends with the builder, the developer. And he said, "I'm moving. Would you guys like to buy my house?" And my dad said, "Of course. You got this big family, had a basement, get the basement finished. Everybody will have enough room." So my family was the first Black family on the street. And as soon as we moved in, the neighbors started moving out. So the house next door, neighbors decided to sell their house. So my dad calls to neighbors from the old neighborhood and said, "Hey, the house next door is for sale. Do you guys want to come move over here where we moved to?" So the newbies moved in, and then it just started. Now, the majority of our street were, Black families, but we had families from all nationalities. There was a family from the Philippines. There were several still white families who lived, further down the street, but nobody cared. Like, it wasn't an issue. We
Mm.
all, as children, played in the street. We were all welcome in each other's homes. All of the fathers and husbands had great respect for each other. There was a family kind of catty corner from us. The husband had died. I recall very distinctly all of the other fathers looking out for Miss Peoples. Like, that was so for
Mm.
me, I was never taught, and I never learned to treat people any different.
Mm.
My elementary school was very diverse, middle school very diverse, high school super diverse. I tell people all the time, class of '86, I'm listening to Run DMC and Duran Duran. That's just how we
Mm.
got down. So
Mm.
and so for me, when you get to corporate America, you understand the context of American society. You understand the littered history of this country from 1619 to present. You understand that the indigenous people who lived on this land, the fact that this continent and the separation that is now the United States versus Mexico, the influence of the Hispanic population, and then you have people who were taken from the continent of Africa and into the Caribbean, into South America, into North America. Those are the harsh realities
Mm.
of who we are as a society. And so to think that those nuances would not also be present in corporate America is completely naive. There's not like a bright white line when you put on a suit and step into the doors of an office to think that all of those things get turned off. And so here you are, at work, just genuinely trying to do your job. And so for me, what I do at work is very much centered around how I grew up, having an appreciation for people being different, but also having an awareness that people are different and people do get treated differently because of being male or female, black, white, Hispanic, gay, whatever that characteristic is. And so what I have shared with people before, coming from a large family, my parents never required us to be exactly like each other, but we had to be a Jones. We all understood what it meant to be part of the Jones family. And so, growing up for me, I have a sister of every variety. I also played in wigs and clothes and shoes and makeup and jewelry. And so, as I got into my HR career and this concept of diversity came up and I started understanding it, I'm like, oh, this is like being part of my family. Like
Mm.
nobody has to be the same and no one should be shunned for what they do that is
Mm.
different. I have a sister who's been cutting her hair since she was 7 years old. She cut bangs for a school picture. I have a sister who,
Can
started.
I make a joke out of that? That would be really handy right now in the UK. COVID here.
Yes.
Mhm.
Just, I actually have a little bit of envy there.
Yes, yes. So,
Oh,
I have sisters who cook. I have sisters who sing.
yeah,
And so, my nephew's post that I shared with you, my oldest sister's oldest
yeah.
son,
Oh,
his ex-wife is white. And there was a very distinct difference between her being accepted into our family and whether or not her family accepted my nephew. And he and my dad had a really close relationship. They are identical twins. It's actually kind of spooky when I go home now because both my parents are deceased. How much he looks like my father, his mannerisms, his
mm,
Mm.
voice, how he stands. It's yeah. And so my nephew was in the Coast Guard, so he traveled around the country, and that was part of the story that my nephew Jamie told. Is um, as a biracial child, but clearly people then learn like, oh, your dad is black, that means you're black. How differently they got treated because of that. And so I I have a responsibility in who I am as a daughter, sister, aunt, much the same way I have a responsibility as an HR professional. And I am a much
Mm.
better HR professional because of how I was raised and how
mm.
and how centered I am
Mm.
in my family in general, but things that I learned because I watched family members be treated a certain way, but I also watched my family. My parents' home was always welcome to everybody.
Mm.
So,
And
if you grew up in that, you must have found the world of work quite startling then,
I
when you first
did.
realized that people aren't like that.
I
And
did.
when, yeah,
Yeah,
when
go ahead,
people
Dan.
tell you like HR is the people function, and you're like, right.
Yeah. So I tell this joke sometimes, when you interview people and you ask them, why do you want to work in HR? And you're green and naive and you use the buzzwords and you're like, oh, because I love working with people. I'm like, morticians work with people. So tell me again why you
Mm,
want to why you want to work with HR. I can tell you dead people are much different than people
mm,
coming into HR. Um,
mm,
it was this people function. I even look at my father. My father and the president of the company that he worked for started at the same time, and clearly careers progressed in different ways, but they had a very trusted relationship. My father, people respected my father. Like, to this day, one of my sisters saw a truck from the company and said, hey, my dad used to work for Limbach. And so the gentleman, asked my sister what was his name, and she told him. He was like, oh, Bill Jones, we remember him. A good guy, sharp dresser when he wasn't in uniform, drove all the trucks. And so the reputation that my father established. And
mm,
so just to put this in context, my father, I was born much later in life. My parents were 50 when I was born. My father was born in 1918. And so I was a late baby. And so my father
Mm.
grew up through some very tumultuous times in this
Mm.
country, and I watched him still create relationships with people and
mm,
gain the respect of people because of his ethics and his mannerisms. And
mm.
so, Glenn, your question about people, I took that with me into the
Yeah.
workplace, knowing that I wouldn't always meet people who
Mm.
would see me or other people the same way. But I knew I always had an opportunity through being myself and doing good and great work, that
Mm,
ultimately people may learn to respect me because I'm a good employee, even if they don't necessarily have an affinity towards dealing with me because of what they perceive about me being black or Christian, or whatever characteristic that people tend to get excluded for.
mm. Yeah, it's an interesting kind of point where, like, so to your point around, when you're talking to people about why they got into recruitment and kind of why they got into HR, a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
do cite the fact that they are, they're people
Mm-hmm.
persons. They
Mm-hmm.
enjoy that interaction with people, and I guess is there a challenge in sustaining that? Because I see, some people really, in HR, you get, people really focusing on the analytics side. They're really
Mm-hmm.
into the data.
Mm-hmm.
They're into the processes, and the same on the recruitment side. But there's almost a point where you have to step back and go, all of this only serves a purpose if the people in the business are getting the maximum value
Yes,
out of it, right?
yes, yes. Yeah, and so under this concept, for me, it's very much a cascading effect. So when I think about having a strong talent management strategy, if you have a strong talent management strategy that is focused on optimizing the talents of every single person, not limiting
Mm,
people, you don't necessarily have to have this super strong dedicated. And I'm not saying turn off your diversity and turn off your compliance, but when you
mm,
think about talent management in general, I want the talent that I have to have the right resources, the right tools, the right recognition to do
mm,
what we need them to do for our company to create the best possible product or service. If that is your focus, then you shouldn't have to say, oh, and in doing that, be fair to women, be fair to ethnic
Mm.
minorities, be fair to
mm,
veterans, be fair to people who are left handed. And what happens is talent management strategies have failed to do that. And
mm,
now you got to dig layers into it to say, oh, you can't only hire men. Oh, you can't say that when women get pregnant, they're no longer of value to your organization. You
mm,
can't use your diverse employees only when that month or that photo op comes around. They're not your diversity mascots. Stop
I
using them
hate
like
that.
that.
mm,
Talk to us all the
So
time or don't talk
offensive.
to us at all. And so that's where, like I said, if you have a solid talent management strategy, that clearly hasn't happened, which is why
Mm.
now you also have these parallels of compliance, what the law requires you to do, and
mhm,
then where diversity and inclusion strategies come in, where you're like, what I hated before, which I'm glad is almost over. What's the business case for diversity? Be human, be fair,
Be kind.
make a lot of money. That's
Yeah.
the business case for diversity. So
Yeah.
it's like I said, it's the subset of compliance and diversity under this umbrella of talent management. That's where you really have to dig into, let people help your company be successful.
Yeah. And the one thing I kind of think of, Kim, I don't know if you kind of agree on that. Some really simple things happen consistently and haven't changed for decades. Certainly not in the 15 years that I've been in recruitment, where simple things like we'll write a job spec, and the job spec consists of skills and experience and deliverables, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've met very few companies that start with, what is the person we want to hire? You know, what kind of soft skills do we want? What, you know, kind of empathy, EQ, communication, you know, those sort of things.
Compassion.
And yeah, exactly. And, you know, by virtue of kind of maybe starting with a set of soft skills of personality, a person, it might actually drive better outcomes, because you're screening from a point of view of a human first, right? And some of the skills and experience for somebody that's really motivated and can learn, they can obtain that in your business.
Yes,
You know?
yes. Well, and it's interesting that you say that. You know, I think that job descriptions have not evolved the way that they should.
That's
Um,
true.
to a certain extent, because people haven't evolved the way
Mm.
that they should.
Oh yeah.
So you'll look at a job description and it almost feels like a recipe for baking a cake. You need 2 eggs, you need some flour. And so where I think that people have gotten caught into the concrete of, to your point, here's the job, here's what you have to have, this degree, this amount of experience. It's not the amount of experience, it's what you learn from those experiences. There are people who will gain the necessary competencies in 2 years where it might have taken somebody else 7 years, depending on their own individual intellect or the environments that they operated in. And so where people get prescriptive in a job description, you have to be more thoughtful about, really, to your point, you hear the word empathy a lot. Can you write that into a job description, and how do you assess for that? Not
Yeah,
every HR person is skilled enough to assess for that. And you don't want to
exactly.
put that responsibility on someone who was unskilled at assessing whether or not a person possesses empathy.
Yeah. I think you're right. And it's a challenging one, but I guess the challenge is there for us to take out. We've got to
Absolutely.
find a way. We've got to increase the bar in terms of the expectation of kind of recruitment and HR, or else if we don't try and meet that challenge, if we
Yes.
don't try and find a solution, it's not going to change. And I think there's also sorry, go on, Katrina.
No, I just wanted to share these couple of comments because I think it's really important, and I think a lot of companies do this. So DG said diversity mascot. That just triggered me. It's such an unfortunate truth. And I see it makes me feel sick. So I'm so with you. Julie, I don't know how to say your surname.
Sowash.
Sowash.
I should know.
Yeah, you should do.
I know. Sorry,
Chad's,
shocking.
Chad's wife.
It's Australian. I know. Well, more like no, never mind. Diversity mascot is a much nicer term than what I use when I'm talking to business leaders about their abuse of people for furthering their PR message. And there's been a lot of that this week, which we really should touch on.
Yes.
And also, I love that Jayshree is also talking more about the inclusion piece as well, which I'm sure that we'll get to.
Yes.
As well. And interestingly, she's talking about we were chatting this morning on Instagram, she's in India and talking about still in India, if you're fairer skin, you have more privilege.
Yes. That's interesting because I have a friend who's from El Salvador. And so here, I think in the United States, we just like to group everybody. Oh, you're Hispanic, not recognizing there are microcultures within the Hispanic population. And so she talked about her being viewed as dark skin
I'm putting that there for Glenn.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, right.
Sorry,
that was absolutely worth interrupting you for.
Yeah.
Oh, look, Kim, this is the only, I promise this is so, I don't mean to be offensive saying this, but it's like lumping Australians, Kiwis and South Africans in together as what we don't like it. So it's, why would anybody else like it? Why do we think that's acceptable?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Yeah, that's
so,
true enough.
like I said, there are micro cultures inside of what we try to group all together as cultures. I was just having this conversation last night. You know, a lot of my career I spent recruiting for college programs. And so, you know, you want to make sure your programs are diverse. And so there were some leadership team members who said, you know, well, as long as we have, you know, Black or African American students, you know, it should be fine. And I'm like, so let me help you understand the difference between Black students who have attended majority universities versus historically Black college and universities.
Mm.
So their HBCUs is the reference here. Majority universities, statistically speaking, know that people are going to fail. They have no problem with that. And they will, it is not uncommon at freshman convocation for majority university to say, look to your left, look to your right. Two of these people won't be here. It's an accepted ratio. And in HBCUs understand the importance of creating HBCU alumni. We are here to get you from your freshman to your senior year. And so in
Mhm.
those freshman convocations, it's look to your left, look to your right, tell that person, I'll see you at graduation. And so that mentality, that mindset, that system of support does something different to who you are as you're growing up now as an adult from 18 to 22. And you bring a different level of confidence and assertiveness into the
Mm.
workplace when you've been educated in an HBCU versus a majority university. You will often hear students of color talk about surviving college because that's what it feels like, because there's not always a solid support network in the university who is dedicated on seeing you graduate, seeing you become an alumni, and really contributing in a positive way.
Wow.
It strikes me, Kim, that you know, what you're talking about there is you know, that kind of traditional kind of linear pathway
Mm-hmm.
into kind of the workplace. And I think one of the challenges I lay down for any company is start to think very differently about how you will kind of engage individuals that are looking for a new opportunity. Start thinking about new ways and new pilot programs to identify. And I know Katrina doesn't like the phrase, but kind of talent pools that are
Yes.
outside of that kind of linear
Yes.
approach, you know, because there are some really good pilot programs that have already been done in the UK that illustrates very clearly
Mm-hmm.
that you don't need a degree, you don't even need experience in a particular, so say for instance, software engineering,
Mm-hmm.
to be trained and then deploy that training very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, companies just, again, it comes back to that traditional piece, right?
Yes.
You know, you've got this wonderfully diverse global groups of people looking for jobs, and yet we put them down the same assessment channel as everyone else.
Yeah. So let me just blow up this whole concept of a job description and requirements. And so I might trigger some TA people. So we all want to sit down with our, you know, hiring managers, you know, tell me what you're looking for. You pulled it from the database. What's special about this job? Let's post this job, see who applies, who most closely aligns. I'm going to phone screen you. Oh, this person was great. They checked off all the boxes. Here's, you know, let's get them in for an interview. The minute a resume is referred by somebody in the C suite, somehow this job can be modified to
Yeah.
accommodate their skill set. Oh, these 7 things, I really only needed the people with 4. And now they have completely remodeled the job because they have now fitted to this person only because it came from somebody in your C suite. And
Yeah.
so, this notion that somehow we can't achieve diversity because there's not enough talent that meets the requirement,
Mm.
you don't even have a requirement. It's a fake requirement because
Yeah.
if that resume came from somebody in your C suite, you would just talk to that person, find out what they're passionate at, what they have a skill
Mm.
set for, what they might be willing to do if you offer them enough training and enrichment. And here you go, that
Mm.
person is there now and they're helping your organization be successful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, myth dispelled. Don't tell me there aren't enough, and don't tell me those people aren't qualified.
100%.
Does it then just come down to bigotry,
Um,
like from hiring managers? Sorry, I want to.
yes, yes.
I
So
haven't had to deal with that in the workplace, but I would assume listeners have.
yes,
So,
and So I made the comment. I've been on everybody's comments saying all kind of stuff. If you're a bigot at home, you're a bigot at work.
Right.
You don't take off a bigot uniform in your car and put on your corporate uniform. And so, okay, so I'm gonna go a little bit different path. So companies have been hiding behind this. Oh, we're gonna offer sensitivity training. I'm already sensitive. I have fingers, I smell, I taste. Those are your senses. We want to offer unconscious bias training, which I get, but we skipped over this whole thing of conscious bias. People
Mm.
who deliberately make decisions to exclude because they feel a type of way about a person or a group of people. That has been permitted. I'm about to blow up another HR concept. This notion that managers are our customers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, they're not. We're here as business partners. And let me give you a couple examples. So, this notion that a manager can say, I only want men in my department. I know the company has this whole diversity thing, but I really want the good people to work in my department. And if a manager says that to you as an HR professional, as a human being, you should be able to say, absolutely not. This does not it's a compliance issue, it's a diversity issue, it's just about
Mm.
being fair. But because we've positioned HR in these situations where we say your manager is your customer, you need to provide good customer service, go to McDonald's, order a cheeseburger, open your bag, get a fish sandwich. That's the concept of customer service. HR is not a drive-through line. So you can't
Mm.
just come in here and say what you want and I don't use my brain and help educate you on things. Here's a different way to put it. Your IT managers send out all things about, phishing scams. And
Mm-hmm.
if you flunk that test enough, they will cut off your access to the network. No questions asked.
Mm.
If you had a hiring manager who was laundering money through your organization, your CFO would not go beg them, like, can you please stop laundering money through our organization? But
If you
somehow,
don't mind.
right, like we don't really all want to go to federal prison.
Mm.
But somehow HR has had to take this, delicate customer
Mm.
service approach and not just being able to correct managers when we see them
Yeah.
obviously make hiring decisions or with the staff that they have limit their access to opportunities and projects. And so that
Mm.
has to stop. And that's where a
Yeah.
lot of things have been allowed to fester in the workplace because we've not been positioned to really represent the organization
Mm.
and say no to things that we know are detrimental behaviors to the organization and to people
So
individually.
Yeah.
actually, some of the diversity problem is coming, by what you're saying, back to HR and TA
So
not
listen,
being strong enough.
yeah. So let me tell you
And
my
to be
own.
honest, did you
Mm.
see the thing that came out of SHRM this morning?
Okay, so
And
Sherm,
but yeah, I know what everyone thinks about it. Like, ugh. But
they
it
failed.
didn't at any point say the C-suite HR level, like the top level of HR, should be standing up to the C-suite and the board and not permitting
Mm.
any of it to happen. It literally said, "Oh, this level,"
Yes.
and I just went,
Mm.
"But
Because Sherm continues to fail. I as a chief HR officer have as much to do with this organization being successful as the chief financial officer,
yeah,
as the chief
Mm.
operating officer. We all have skin in the game. And
Mm.
this, pansy weak pathetic positioning of
mm,
I even had a person last night. I commented, how do I stand up a diversity program without it seeming like we're just responding to
mm,
what's going on? As an HR person, why would you be trying to disguise the fact that your organization has been late to the table about
Mm.
embracing diversity? This is the problem. Stop trying to fix up their mess. Give people the
Yeah.
right words to own it and say we failed. We
Mm.
haven't been committed. We haven't
mm.
demonstrated commitment. Let me
Mm.
acknowledge that. And now let's move forward. Ben and Jerry's, I'm about to spend all of my money and burn all my calories on Ben and Jerry's ice cream because I so appreciated the flat-footed message that they put out. A lot of companies have put some things out, but I'm going back to their website. Was this your first comment about this? Or is there continuity
Yeah.
because of the things that you've been doing consistently? So HR is culpable. And you can't be an
Mm.
accomplice to foolishness. That's not the position you want to be in life or in our corporate spaces.
Go on, Katrina.
Oh, I was just going to share some of the comments, but you go.
Go for it.
Please,
Yeah.
no, actually, I would
Yeah.
like
Let's
to
go
hear
for the
some of the
comments.
comments.
Oh, so
Yeah.
Simon Halkett, yes, they are not our customers. I say this all the time. What they want is not always what is right. Our job is to partner, educate, and be the expert, be respected, not liked.
Amen,
Definitely.
Simon.
Amen. And Tom Bolt, Kim is one of the best guests you've had online. I'm planning to promote this for those who missed it. Thank you,
Shout out,
Mr. Bolt.
Tom. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. We like it when people have an opinion.
Definitely.
I think it's important. I want to know. I want to know what we need to be doing. And I'm by that I mean, as a white person, I want to know what I need to be doing because
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
I'm going to give you two answers. I'm going to give you, because I have a responsibility as an aunt and I have a responsibility as an HR person. So, as an aunt in the community, these are all of the things that I have done, but I know I need to do a better job of. And I do want people, kind of at the table with me. For one, I need to start attending city council meetings on a regular basis. I need our elected officials to know I voted for you to do a job. And I need you to do your job. And when you don't do your job, you won't be in the seat anymore. I need the police department to know I have an interest in being part of the community oversight board, but also community engagement. Policing doesn't have to be enforcement if we start making policing engagement. If you're out in the community and people don't just see you when they call 911, they see you really, being part of what we do every day in a proactive, friendly way, then police won't be seen as the villains. The other piece is, and I think this is important, the Fraternal Order of Police. I understand the premise of that organization, especially here in the United States. However, they have taken this position. I might get some flack from people who are listening who are police or involved in police. I'm happy to have this discussion any day of the week.
Needs to be
But
had.
what happens is when something happens, the Fraternal Order of Police will dig in their heels and will attempt to defend a police officer, even when they are blatantly wrong. And so the thing that I'm going to ask the Fraternal Order of Police, put your money where your mouth is. When cities are sued, clearly there's insurance that goes along with, okay, here's the money. If the Fraternal Order of Police is so confident that their police are acting appropriately, they appreciate and respect people in the community, they are willingly using de-escalation tactics and not immediately tasering and killing people. When it's found that that police have violated that, let's start taking that money out of pensions and retirements and not out of the city's insurance fund. Be a partner at the table and put your money where your mouth is. So that's on my aunt community side. As an HR leader, here's what I need to do. We need to not be afraid to speak our mind. And a lot of times people say, well, HR is not there for the employees. HR is there to protect the company. I need CEOs to completely redefine the HR function. If a manager has sexually assaulted someone at work, an HR person should not be trying to mitigate risk. They should, first of all, be making sure that person has received medical treatment, the police have been called, somebody's been arrested. Like there has to be a different level of accountability. I'm not going to be at work and be an accomplice. And so with our C-suite, with our leaders, with our line employees, with managers, we have to, in a very bold, declarative way, say, this is how we will be at work. People will be safe. People will be valued. People will be protected. I'm going to give you a couple stories. I'm watching our time, but I think it's
I
important to
know.
know.
Damn it.
HR.
We did start about 5 minutes late.
Let's just keep
I don't have a
rolling.
hard stop. So HR is sometimes the biggest offender. And so I'm going to share with you guys just a couple things that have happened to me in HR. I was told early in my career by the talent acquisition officer you need to cut your fingernails because they give you that hey homegirl what's up kind of feel. And I
What?
said, so why are my fingernails a problem? And they said, well, they could be distracting. And
Oh
so I
my
said,
God.
okay, if I
To
were in a
who?
these are all true stories. I promise on everything I love. I would not lie.
And were they in any way, shape, or form stopping you from doing your job?
No. And so my
Oh,
question back to
fuck.
this person was, if
Oh.
I was in a wheelchair, would you be distracted? If my breasts were large, would you be distracted? So this notion of distraction, it not for me. And I just explained to I'm not cutting my fingernails. So if you're telling me I won't be promoted if I don't cut my fingernails, then I will forever sit right in this seat. Two other things that happened. I was the plant that I worked in. We were away. We had a pager at that time as a pager. I would come back to the department, and the team would be like, "We were paging you, and you didn't answer." And I'm like, "My pager never went off." So the manager was very frustrated with me, and get it fixed. So I send it to IT get it fixed. The IT guy calls me and says, "I fixed your pager. It had water in the motherboard." And I'm like, water? And he was like, did you drop it in some water? And I said, no. I said, I'm new. I just started. I'm assuming
Mm.
this was brand new. And he was like, no, I'll fix it and I'll send it to you. So I hang up. We're in an open department. The girl behind me says, who was that? And I said, well, it was the IT guy. They said there was water in the motherboard. Now everybody starts laughing, the whole department. And I'm like, well, what's so funny?
Oh
And he
no.
said,
Oh God.
well,
They didn't
the
give you one that went down the loo.
they said Margie was here. Her son dropped it in the toilet. And so we just gave it to you when you got here. These were people in HR. These were people
Fucking
in
hell.
HR. These are people in HR. So,
How can a human treat another human like that and
so
think that's acceptable?
your title, you are who you are at home, you are who you are at work. When
Mm.
you hire despicable people, they bring all of that despicable with them to work. And so, Glenn, back
Mm.
to what you're saying, when we are making decisions about who to hire, who to trust with really important
Mm.
roles, there's a different layer of questions we really
Yeah.
need to be asking people to make sure. The other side of that is when you see that something has gone wrong and you offer your fancy little sensitivity trainings, what companies never do after those trainings is go back and ask people, now that you've heard us reaffirm what we
Mm.
stand for, do you want to be here or did you hear something and you're like, nah, I can't
Mm.
commit to this. So let me just go ahead and pack my little box and leave. But
Mm.
companies never do that. They give everybody a certificate and check it off in your LMS system that you
Yeah.
attended training, thinking that
Boom.
that fixed everything. You can't fix a person's soul. That's not
No.
that's not what you can do. God can, but
Yeah.
or whomever is your higher
Mm.
being, but
Mm.
Mm.
a sensitivity training does not fix what's in a person's soul.
It's there is a level of irony in the fact that you do unconscious bias training when somebody's in a business, as opposed to
Mm. Before.
assessing that
before
before
they
they
come
even get a
before they
job,
come yes,
right? And
yes.
there's ways and means of doing that. And I think, yeah, I mean, that always struck me as strange in so much as, you kind of join a business, you could be a really senior leader. I'll just do the online unconscious bias training, tick that box, and then but nobody ever actually comes back and kind of really has a discussion with you afterwards around, okay, why do you select this particular answer, and challenge you on some of your answers to really kind of
Yeah.
get a sense of you as a person,
There was a organization that I worked for. They did unconscious bias training, and the group got together after and said, "Oh, like, oh, we get it. What should we do?" And they were like, "Oh, we should start letting the women and minorities go with us to campus." Oh, y'all gonna let us go with y'all now? Like, that is so nice of you that you're going to give us
Let
permission.
us.
Let us.
Mm,
Let us.
And
yeah.
so
Oh.
it's those types of things. And so, like I said, in my community, I'm acting as an aunt. And when I'm in an HR corporate environment, I have to, in a very definitive way, declare what's right and what's wrong. You cannot be in the middle of that. There has to be an absoluteness to what we do, that if a news reporter, if social media, if a story is spontaneously told about your organization, you should not be sitting around wincing or with your fingers crossed like, oh God, I hope something crazy is not about to be told. Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah. I think you make a really clear point, Kim, in so much as perhaps some kind of recruiters and maybe HR functions feel like they're a service for the business, but actually they have a great responsibility. Absolutely. Because we are, they are the teams, they are the people that are thinking about the people either coming into the business or people that are already existing in the business, and finding a way to really ensure that you can be very true and have a voice is again our responsibility. It's not enough to say, well, it doesn't really work like that in this company. Well, that's not good enough. You either try and make that change, or you realize you can't make that change and you make a choice as to whether that's the type of business you want to stay with or leave.
Yes. So my message to every CEO who might be on this call, who might hear it, what I'm going to challenge you to do, change the function of your HR organization and your D&I organization. Not to make them the police, but they have to be free to speak the truth and do what's right. You might actually have some HR people in your organization who should not be there any longer, because they too are as much a problem as those managers and employees who are out in the organization, making it really difficult and sometimes not safe for their employees to actually be in those environments.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's
totally.
I think exactly should be the last point. Kimberly Jones, holy cow. Little heart chakras going off in how horrible people can be. Lots of people wanting to connect with you.
Yes.
Jeremy Roberts, Simon Halkyard. I will put a link, but I can't do it right now because literally I'll just blow everything up. I had enough trouble coming live. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, no, I it means a lot to me. I have platforms that I can let people be heard, and I fully plan to use them as I continue to, because everyone needs to be heard. So thank you for sharing, and
thank you for allowing me access to your platform. This is one of the things I've been talking about, is this list of influencers. All of us have an opportunity to be an influencer in some way, and being able to share, our audiences to help people be better. This is, what we should be doing.
Exactly.
100%.
Glenn, nice to meet you. I look forward to catching up with you when I come through London.
Actually,
safely
there'll be a moment just as we end where we'll go back into the green room. We didn't get to tell you any of this beforehand because it all blew up. So thank you everyone for all of your comments. Mr. Harkard has said thank you. I think he's yelling in a very North England accent for that. So he'll need to record it and send it to you. You've got to hear it. Awesome accent. There we go. Another one. Thank you for speaking so many truths.
Thank you. I love you.
I mispronounced her name as well.
No, her real name is Dietrich. She goes by Dee. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I gave you her government name.
This Australian accent. I just feel like I mispronounce everything. So it's like, oh gosh. I don't even know who our guest is next week. Next week, Tech is going to work for us, though. It was these, wasn't it? In the end, it was. Kim, thank you. Glenn, thank you. And everyone who's been here. We shall be back next week again, 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. UK time. Everyone have a fantastic weekend, and please
have a good day.
Reflect on everything you've just heard.
Yeah, definitely.
Good luck to everybody.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Again, Kim. Bye.